Two new players linked with a move to Arsenal, whilst one could be getting plenty of interest from elsewhere. This is the Arsenal Transfer Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of what is the Arsenal Transfer Show. Join you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you as always for joining me and making this a part of your morning routines. It is incredibly appreciated. I hope you had a fantastic week so far, and with it being Thursday, you've nearly made it to the end of the week. So an enjoyable weekend, I'm sure, to come. Good morning to those joining us live in the chat box. Good morning to Cole, to Mr. E, Blackshine, Angela, Stevie, Roy, Emmett, Amesy, Errol, Jack. We've got Martin and Angela, Jean, James, Aaron, and Becco, sorry. We've got Stephen, we've got Jose, we've got Shari, we've got Simply Unity, and John and Maximius and Carlton, and plenty more of you guys and girls as well. Thank you to you all for tuning in. If you could ever be so kind to drop a like on the video, that would be massively appreciated as we try and reach 1K every single day on the channel. So thank you for the continued support as always on this once again exceptionally hot morning here in the United Kingdom. It's very, very warm, and it's becoming it's very uncomfortable. I have to say, whenever I bring up the temperature, or I hear other people bring up the temperature of, whatever, their country, what you often get is you get people from other countries who obviously live in very hot climates, hotter than here, turning around to you and basically being like, why is Tom moaning about it being 26, 28 degrees? We get 35, 40 degrees. And just for a second, just for a second, think that there might be that contextual difference, between what you're used to experiencing and what people elsewhere are used to experiencing. So, yeah, it's currently 26 degrees in this office, which is pretty uncomfortable. So, I do always appreciate when people send their sympathies, but my goodness, when people send a message saying that's not even hot, it's like, I get it. You live in a different climate all the time. It's hotter than ours, but you're used to that. And simply, we are just not. We're not built for that here in Britain. Anyway, let's go into today's stories, shall we? And we start with England at the European Championships and the completion of the group stages of the tournament. A very interesting evening and a huge result as well for Georgia, who managed to get a result against Portugal to send them through to the last 16 of the competition. We also saw some rather dramatic results as well, considering that Romania and Slovakia did indeed draw, rather unsurprisingly. I think we can all agree there was this chaotic scenario where, with both teams only needing a draw for them both to go through, many were expecting that to indeed end in a draw. And it did. Ukraine going out of the European Championships with 4 points, the most any team has ever left the tournament with, supposedly. And Turkey with a last-minute winner against the Czech Republic to end their hopes of a late comeback and to keep their European Championship hopes alive. And what this means is we've got a very interesting last 16 matchup. We've got Spain against Georgia, Germany against Denmark, Portugal against Slovenia, and France against Belgium on one side of the draw. On the other side of the draw is Romania against Netherlands, Austria against Turkey, England against Slovakia, and Switzerland against Italy. Now, this is a brilliant opportunity for England to get to another European Championship final. The best side on England's side of the draw is themselves. Outside of that, it is, of course, the Netherlands. And England will be, with Italy, of course, there too, who have not particularly impressed either. But Italy, England, and the Netherlands will be the favourites to get to the final on that side of the draw. Switzerland, I think, are a bit dark horses in this as well. Turkey and Austria have also had some decent showings, and Romania as well, finishing top of their group. Some very interesting results in the first stage of the competition, but you should be looking at this if you're England and going, England should reach the final here. It's not about arrogance. It's not about, the over expectation of England. If you look at England's squad, if you look at the team they have and you compare it to the teams they're going up against in any of these rounds, England should be beating Slovakia, then they should be beating Italy or Switzerland, and then they should be beating any one of the other four that they could reach in the semis. Doesn't mean that we will, of course, and we should be beating Slovenia. We should be beating Denmark, and we didn't. So there is no one's being unrealistic about what's going on. Everyone understands that certainly there is a massive chance that England may not even get out of the last 16. It can happen because that's what England do. But based upon the draw, based upon this graphic, as you can see, yeah, it's set up for England to do rather well. But whether that happens is another thing. Now, moving into more Arsenal-specific news, according to Dame Sheth of Sky Sports, Fulham and Crystal Palace are both interested in signing Emile Smith-Rowe, the England international and Arsenal attacking midfielder, of course, as we know, is currently in Marbella with the Arsenal team, looking to improve his fitness ahead of the brand new season. But what is interesting about this story continues to be whether or not any club will stump up the amount of money that it would take to convince Arsenal to sell Smith Rowe. When you're hearing stories that Eddie Nketiah is being valued at £50 million, the idea that Arsenal would be able to get, however much, I imagine they'd want huge sums of money. Surely, if they want Nketiah for 50 million, I really cannot get my head around what on earth they would ask for Emile Smith-Rowe. I hope that Arsenal get a really serious amount of money for Smith-Rowe this window if he is indeed to go, to justify obviously all the development and resources that have been put into his time with the club. But we're going to have to wait and see on that one. But there are clubs interested in Fulham and Crystal Palace supposedly, so let's see how this story transpires. And another story, Gerard Moreno of Spanish journalists' circles has suggested that Joan Garcia, who is an Espanyol goalkeeper, is very much linked strongly now with a move to Arsenal. There's a number of teams said to be interested. Tottenham have also been mentioned. I think I've seen a story suggesting. But the 23-year-old Spanish goalkeeper is said to be of interest to Arsenal. Last season, he played 14 games for the La Liga 2 sides and 3 games in their Copa del Rey games. He managed to keep 12 clean sheets across all competitions, as well as Espanyol returned to the top division of Spanish football, and seems to be a very sought-after goalkeeper from the amount of stories that are suddenly coming out. He only broke into the team in the second half of the season, the last third, I guess, is probably the best way of putting it, of the season. Prior to that, Espanyol's goalkeeper Fernando Pacheco, was the goalkeeper that was playing there. Yes, Joan Garcia gradually getting into the team and claiming that spot for his own over the much more experienced Pacheco. So an interesting goalkeeper, and let's see if Garcia is indeed the player that Arsenal choose to bring in to be their long-term replacement for Aaron Ramsdale. And the last story today, according to Matteo Moretti, who's been kind of covering a lot of Italian news alongside Fabrizio Romano, he has suggested that Arsenal have made an inquiry for Bologna defender Riccardo Calafiori, who is very impressive when you look at his numbers and you look at kind of his profile as a player. He's now currently obviously with the Italian national side at the European Championships, and yes, he's got a lot of interest in him from a number of clubs. We've seen a number of Premier League sides register interest. We know that Juventus is said to be the most advanced with any move for Calafiori. But if you look through his numbers, he got, for a centre-half, a lot of assists last season. In fact, he ranked in the 99th percentile of centre-backs for assists with 5. He scored a couple of goals as well. But defensively, very good. 96th percentile for interceptions, 74th percentile for tackles, 72nd percentile for blocks. And then looking at his passing as well, he's very good on the ball. We had 92 percentile in terms of successful take-ons, 81st percentile in terms of progressive carries, passes attempted in the 80th percentile, progressive passes in the 59th percentile, and progressive passes recovered is in the 88th percentile as well. So very much a progressive centre-half and in the style of what Arsenal would like in a defender. He's a left-sided defender as well. He can play left-back, has played left-back. He is left-footed. So if Arsenal were going to say move on Jakub Kiwior, it does seem that Calafiori would be a natural replacement. But would he want guarantees about starting games? Is that going to happen at Arsenal? It's difficult to know at this stage. We're going to go to part 2 now, and we're going to tackle some of your questions and thoughts right after this. Okay, part two. This is the element of the show where we go into the chat box and tackle as many of your questions as we can. So, without further ado, we're going to do that right now. Vuk says, best side on that side being England, not on performance in the Euros, definitely no. Absolutely not. Certainly not on performances so far, Vuk. It's purely on, the quality of the players available to the squads on that side of the draw. England on paper, and it is only on paper, Vuk should be getting to the final on that side of the draw. Supreme Kai, thank you so much for the kind donation. Thank you for the support of the channel. Very kind of you indeed. Rich says, Tom, suppose we swap Eze for Smith Rowe. What's the chance, do you think, that in a year, Smith Rowe, excuse me, will be at the same level as Eze? I think he just needs a good run of games. It's a fair question to ask because Eze plays week in, week out for a team that, is very much tailored to playing with him and Elise and Mateta and getting the best out of those players, whereas Smith Rowe isn't getting many minutes for Arsenal. Would Smith Rowe, if he was playing as many minutes as Eze has for Arsenal or for Palace, be doing as well? It's impossible to know the answer, of course, but there's always a chance that that could happen. But the problem that Smith Rowe has got is his injuries don't allow him to play that many games successively in a season. Logan says, why are the top-seeded teams seemingly struggling to score goals? Is it because more teams have sussed out how to defend against the high press? And this will also happen in the league this season. Very well articulated question. I think that there is something to be said about the teams that are further down the rankings or the expectations are much lower. Often you see them go into tournaments with a lot of excitement and maybe less street smarts. And actually this tournament, we've seen them go into these games a lot more savvier, and that they're sitting back, they're hitting on the counter. They've got better coaches, better managers now as well. There's a lot of really good coaches, working with a lot of these smaller nations too and helping them improve, and that improves their tactics as well as, their output. And I think that that's probably part of it. Will that happen this season? Well, Arsenal played against plenty of low blocks and they've scored plenty of goals anyway. So I don't think that's necessarily going to change, but I guess we'll have to wait and see on that one. FM Catenaccio says, really can't see Calafiori coming to Arsenal when Juventus are keen on bringing him in. And considering he's played under Motta last season as well, again, it makes it very difficult for Arsenal to move for a player when his former manager has now just gone to Juventus. Selling that project would be far, far easier. And for your Italians, they don't tend to like leaving Italy. Italian players, it's not seen as, it's not the Frances of this world. It's not even kind of in some regions like Spain has changed a lot. A lot of Spanish players have started to leave a lot more, but France in particular, it's not like their Italian players do on the whole tend to prefer to stay in the Italian league, and clubs like Juve and Milan and Inter are dream teams for these players to eventually end up at. Ike says, what do you think about Arsenal taking David De Gea as our backup? Is it a bad idea? I mean, only in a very desperate scenario, I think, Ike, would I consider David De Gea. We need a goalkeeper that can be as good of a distributor as possible, and that was one of the big reasons why Man United moved on from David De Gea, is because sadly he just could not keep up the he couldn't keep up with the level of the distribution that Arsenal that Man United needed. So I don't think that's going to happen with Arsenal, but maybe if we're desperate, we'll go and get him. Zahid says, what are your thoughts on the Saka left-back shouts by Righty and the backlash? The backlash is always going to be over the top. An online world at the moment is crazy. But Righty, I think, was just trying to work out a way in which we can improve the left-hand side by getting a left footer onto the left-hand side, getting best players into the team like Cole Palmer is. And I don't think he deserved as much stick as he ended up getting for that, to be honest. I understood where he was coming from. I wouldn't have done that personally, but I understand where he was coming from. Baron says, morning, Gooners. I feel like Arsenal's supposed interest in Garcia was used to speed up his Dortmund deal. Of course, Sehu Garcia has indeed now signed, is about to sign. It's all but agreed with Borussia Dortmund. They released they are going to activate that release clause. So I think that for a player like that, using Arsenal has happened before. Don't know if that's happened in this case, of course, but I know why people like Baron are making the assumption that that is the case. Mighty says, Tom, so you think England have too many system players because our players don't play as well for the national team as they do for their club team? I think it's about multiple different players and multiple different systems coming together in one. You need a manager that's able to kind of knit all of that together and get that to kind of work. And we don't have that. We have a manager that stubbornly plays his kind of methodical, monotonous style. Doesn't get the best in the players, tries to shoehorn players into positions that they aren't necessarily the best at playing. Foden can play on the left for City, but he plays in the City system. It's not the Southgate system of what a left winger is expected of. You need to find better balance, and he's not been able to do that so far. Gooner says, Tom, if we give Smith Rowe more time and he doesn't improve and try and sell him, our fan base will go mad if we only get £10 million for him. And again, this is kind of the other side of the coin. Do you sell Smith Rowe now when you're going to get arguably as much as maybe possible for him? Or do you keep him for another year? He has a year left on his contract then at the end of the next season. And then it's really difficult to deal with. Sufyan says, hope you're well, mate, and hopefully the cooling weather next week helps you. Yes, it is set to cool down next week, and I am longing for that. Any updates on Mikel Moreno? It's gone very quiet ever since that story came out from Spain. These things do kind of have peaks and troughs in terms of, stories coming out and interest being talked about. I've no doubt that there's interest, but, we see stories pop up, tell us Arsenal are interested in XYZ player, and then it's not talked about for a little bit, and then it comes up again. So no update, no progression on that deal, just interest. Bengal Boy says, would you swap Calafiori with Gabriel? No, I wouldn't. Idan says Calafiori is our best opportunity this summer. Perfect left back. Time to bring in our own Gvardiol. I mean, it kind of makes sense, the comparison. Gvardiol mainly a centre half, but played left back a lot for both Croatia at times and Leipzig, and now has played, of course, left back as well for Manchester City. So I get the comparison. I think it does work to a degree. But yes, I think that for Calafiori, who has been playing, I think, this Euros at centre half, with DeMarco playing as their left back. But yeah, I see where you're coming from with that. Amir Oguna says, Tom, it would be interesting if we went for a number one goalkeeper and Rayo was therefore the number two. You can never rule it out. Arteta does like to stir things up with the goalkeeping positions, doesn't he? Franklin says, Tom, is Arsenal still going to charge to watch the pre-season from the website? Probably. I imagine they probably will. So you're going to have loads, millions of fans being able to watch those games, and there's an opportunity to bring in some additional revenue. So I doubt that they will make it free, but who knows? We'll have to wait and see, I guess. Barry says, how did the golf go yesterday? I was terrible, says Barry. Pretty good. Not bad. For someone who's been playing for only the last 2 years, I was very close to breaking 100, which I don't do on a regular occasion. I'm usually in the 110s because, as I say, I'm complete amateur and still learning my way around the courses. And it was a brand new course that I played. We played at Sutton Green, which is just around the M25, although the traffic yesterday was horrific. But myself and a journalist friend of mine, got round. He managed to get 89. It's very good. I managed to get 102. Very close to breaking that 100, which I've only ever done once before. So breaking that 100 is always for me my target, and I got very, very close to it and played some good shots on the day, but found the water. It's a very water heavy course, so I found the water. I'll be honest, like 4 times. But it was enjoyable, and it was a much needed break from the chaos of this sphere, shall we say. Ishan says, hey Tom, any news on Chido Obi Martin? Not since that report from Scoop a couple of weeks ago, claiming that he was in advanced stages to join Bayern. We've still not heard anything on that front at the moment. Barry says, I think that it's time to sell the likes of Smith Rowe as well, which I absolutely get people's thoughts around. Why have a really expensive option on the bench? Why not try and bring money in for him as well? TJR says, only 4 days until actually deals can start. Get the countdown clock going. For some fans, it's their Christmas. Obviously, this PSR deadline for a lot of clubs means that they're going to want some sales on their books after July. I think that's probably one of the reasons as to why the David Raya deal is being kind of pushed into. For those that didn't have doubts about when Arsenal's accounting years are running through, just think about the David Raya deal and what that tells us. Mighty says, Tom, do you know which players have gone to Marbella for early preseason training? Yes, courtesy of James Bench, who broke this story to the best of my understanding. Smith Rowe, Reece Nelson, Eddie Nketiah, Ben White, Jurriën Timber, Fabio Vieira have gone, and Martin Odegaard is going to join up with them as well. Jimmy says, what about the rumours of Isak to Chelsea? Are they true? From what I think Matt Law reported, who is obviously very good when it comes to Chelsea, no. He tweeted saying Chelsea are not in the market to buy Alexander Isak this summer. The money involved would be insane, which makes it a non-starter. So those reports linking Isak to Chelsea have been very well sourced in terms of Matt Law's decision to say that they are untrue. So no, nothing in that story I am led to believe from what Matt Law is suggesting. And Trevor says you can't compare Smith Rowe and Eddie on price. The lack of strikers is why you can up the price. I think, Trevor, that's a fair point, but I still think, in terms of what Smith Rowe is, the amount of, if we think about the level of Smith Rowe compared to the level of Nketiah, most people would rank Smith Rowe considerably higher than Nketiah. Simon says, Tom, when do we get another crossbar challenge at the Emirates? So I'd missed this year's Emirates Media Day. I was in Italy on holiday when they did this year's Emirates Media Day. So I was gutted to miss it, and I would love to have been there once again. I think they even did 11-a-side games this year rather than the 7-a-side games from the pictures that I've seen. So I was gutted to miss this year's Emirates Media Day like last year. I was in Italy on holiday, but it's part of the job, and I was very grateful to do it the time I did it last year, and hopefully I'll get to do it again next year. But I was on holiday at the time, and I think what I'll do is next year, if I have a holiday in June, I may have to think about when it is, because it was very early in June this year, as you guys all very much well know. So I missed I missed it, which was a frustration. But you can't win them all. You can't win them all. I think those that went had a brilliant time. Rich says, Tom, were the water shots a subconscious cry for help? Did you really just want to be at a swimming pool? No, trust me, mate. I've needed the water. It's been a struggle with the heat. It's really been, I suffer with like hay fever, dry mouth at times, and speaking for a living. When you suffer with those, it's tough. It's definitely needed, Rich. But I understand the sentiment. Richard says, thoughts on selling Smith Rowe, loaning Vieira, hopefully with an obligation to buy, and moving Zinchenko into midfield. I've never been on the whole Zinchenko into midfield thing. I think buy players who play the positions, buy players who are for their club are playing this week in, week out. You don't need to force Zinchenko into midfield role. I think he will probably either this summer or next be sold, but that could change. Things change all the time. Philip says, Tom, I saw a breakdown of Osimhen from the different knock on how he would fit into our system. I just wondered if you had seen it and whether you think Arsenal should go all out for him. I haven't seen it yet. I know George is a big fan of Osimhen. I'm not in the same camp. I'm not, for one, thinking that Osimhen is the right choice for Arsenal. I think the money associated with that deal just doesn't make any sense. I think there is finishing concerns with Osimhen. His numbers don't correspond even, really to outweigh Kai Havertz's finishing numbers. So I struggle with that one. Let's go to TJR says, breaking 100. Whoa, seriously? Best round I ever shot was 69 on a 72. Chipped in 3 times in one round, 2 longish putts, and then retired forever. Well, you got to start somewhere, mate. You've got to start somewhere. So it's as simple as that. Boss says, Tom, I read some of the Arsenal were interested in signing Arda Güler. Is there any truth in this? I doubt it. Real Madrid are in no way open to selling him whatsoever. So if there's an interest from Arsenal, maybe, but there's no chance they get him. Amaro Gooner says, Tom, as in football, Isak, Guimaraes, Shesko, and all the players that we're linked with could have rubbish seasons, and our fan base would say we missed a bullet there. Remember Mudryk. That always happens. There's always a chance that the players that you link with that you don't end up getting can have terrible campaigns, in the same way that you can let players go like Balogun, who also don't have the best of seasons after you've let them go. So there's always a chance. Does that mean that you don't sign a player? No, because you'd hope that you'd be able to give them a different outcome if they were to sign for Arsenal. So I get where you're coming from, but yeah, certainly. Jimmy says, off topic, but have you ever ordered chocolate cake from Nando's and there's a piece missing from the top? Every time I've ordered for the last 4 years, there's always a piece missing. I don't know what you're talking about, Jimmy. I haven't got a clue what you mean. What do you mean a piece missing? As in like the layers of the... I'm really struggling to know what you mean. I thought there was just 2 layers, unless I'm going mad and there's 3. There might be 3 now I think about it, but whatever it is, you've had a good day if you get chocolate cake and you keep ordering it, it's happy days. You can't complain about that. Big says, Tom, what do you think about a striker who's physical and has played on the wing like a Marcus Thuram? In theory, he could provide competition for both Havertz and the wing positions. I think it's very telling, like the type of player that Arsenal are looking at the centre forward role. Sesko, Gyökeres, all these players being linked at the moment. We've seen Dovbyk linked as well. There's a very common theme running through these strikers that Arsenal have been linked to. So I understand where you're coming from with Marcus Thuram, although I don't think that Inter Milan will have any interest in letting him go. Mighty says, Tom, do you think that Jean-Claude Mateta, Jean-Philippe Mateta could do a job for us up front? I'm sure he could do a job, but I just don't think he's of the required level on a consistent basis for us to commit that type of deal for him. Adam says, yeah, the piece missing is the rest of the cake. I want the whole thing. I love that. TGR says, chocker not enough. I think he means someone has nicked some of his cake. I mean, I've never found that someone's had it missing, unless it's a joke and he's saying you're not getting enough in your serving. But, oh dear, you're making me want Nando's now. And I'm meant to be being as good as I can, but you're making it tough. You're making it very, very tough. Ray Beam says, Tom, is Chelsea set to repeat their £1 billion bottle job season the way that they are buying again? I mean, from some of the links that we're seeing, you know, there are a lot of young players that continue to come in from Brazil in particular. Can they make those adjustments? Can they deliver in the Premier League after playing so well in Brazil and showing so much talent and quality? We will have to wait and see. Paul says, give me a birthday signing for Arsenal, please. Half Tom's age today. Well, when Tom reaches to his 21st anyway. Happy birthday, Paul. I hope you have a fantastic day, my friend. And I think I've already seen some people wishing you well wishes in the chat box as well. So enjoy your day, and I hope it brings you all the happiness in the world. Thank you, everybody, as well, for listening. Appreciate your time. As always, just, yeah, thanks for the support. It means a lot, and I appreciate it. So thanks for that. Do drop a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. And stay safe, stay well, stay happy, and this word in particular, respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.